Introduction to Numbers. Author Moses. Date written between 1450 and 1400 BC. Time span about 39 years, the period of Israel's history from the second year after the Exodus to just prior to the conquest of Canaan. Title: The Book of Numbers gets its name from the two censuses numberings of the nation of Israel. Background: the fourth book of the Tanakh, Numbers, is a continuation of the story in the book of Leviticus. Approximately 1 month elapsed from the time the tabernacle is constructed at the end of Exodus to the time of the census at the beginning of Numbers. During that month, the instruction in the book of Leviticus are given. Where written, Mount Sinai and the wilderness, as Moses leads the people to the promised land. To whom? To the Israelites. Content: Numbers is the story of nearly 40 years of wilderness wandering by the Israelites between the times of two separate censuses of the people. The first census is of the older generation, the generation that came up out of Egypt. It takes place at Mount Sinai in the second year of the Exodus. The second census is of the new generation. It takes place on the plains of Moab opposite Jericho 38 years later and just prior to the nation's entering of Canaan. Even though the old generation, with the exception of Joshua and Caleb, is not allowed to enter the promised land, God still provides for and sustains the people through these wanderings. Key words: wandering, census. The emphasis of Numbers is on the wanderings of the Israelites in the wilderness during the time between the census taken of old generation of Israelites and later the census of the new generation. Themes: our discipline from God is sometimes stern, but he ultimately rewards those who are obedient to his word. Believers will never have to live in the wilderness, but may have to walk through it. Just as God's punishment for disobedience is sure, so is God's pardon and restoration for repentance. We can progress as children of God only as we allow him to nurture our growth. Murmuring and complaining are offensive to the God we serve. Numbers chapter 11. Outline. Number 1, the first census of the Israelites is taken. Numbers chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 4, verse 49. Number 2, old generation prepares to inherit the promised land. Numbers chapter 5, verse 1 through Numbers chapter 10, verse 10. Number 3, old generation fails to inherit the promised land. Numbers chapter 10, verse 11 through Numbers chapter 21, verse 35. Number 4, Israel encounters the Moabites and Balaam. Numbers chapter 22, verse 1 through chapter 25, verse 18. Number 5, the second census of the Israelite is taken. Numbers chapter 26, verses 1 through 65. And number 6, the new generation prepare to inherit the promised land. Numbers chapter 27, verse 1 through Numbers chapter 26, verse 13. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading of the introduction of Numbers.